Ba ba ba. Welcome back to another episode of the most overrated, underappreciated, most viewed, underviewed podcast of all time. Welcome to the Prince. Fresh Air. I am, of course, your host, the most charismatic man of entertainment. No, I'm not Jason Momoa. As I walk down the street in New York City, people always stop me for autographs. They want to touch the hair and they say, "Hey, Percy, you look like Jason Momoa. Is that your twin brother?" Unfortunately, not. That's not the case. But anyway, let me get off that for a second. Just a couple things. As we come into the new year, I want people to take away something positive always from every episode that I do, and I want to start this new year doing something different with the podcast. Normally, I end the podcast on a positive note, but I also want to start off the podcast with a positive note. Lately, the last couple months, a lot of family tragedies for myself, and I'm sure millions and thousands of others out there. And life is short. And recently, my high school science teacher, Mr. Han, sadly passed away from cancer. So my condolences to his wife, his family. And it really goes to show one of the things he said, right before his final days was, life is short. I'm not gonna let this illness stop me from living life. So whatever your vice is, as long as it's controlled, every day try to be positive. Do something that you enjoy, whether it's playing basketball, going for a long walk on the beach, eating a slice of cheesecake, strawberry, I recommend. But I want everybody every day do something that makes you happy because tomorrow is not guaranteed. And even for me, the most charismatic man, sometimes I forget to live in the moment, which I am doing now. So I hope everybody else do the same. Now, enough of the blabbing. I know people want to get into the episode, so let me introduce my next guest. We've been trying to get this going for like the last 4 or 5, 6 months. From Tom Cruise calling me, Taylor Swift asked me to go on the Eras tour. It's been crazy, but we made it happen. So, it's a pleasure to have this guest on. He goes by the name DJ Cereal Sauce. He's a YouTube creative, Twitch streamer, producer, and podcast host of Eye for Talent, no pun intended. He's most known for his videos on Ultra Kills Music. He also runs a content group called Nothing Is Anything, uploading variety content every week. He's a great guy. I'm glad that he finally made it on. We finally made this happen. Taylor Swift, I will get back to you because I just saw you email me. But let's bring on Dylan Stafford. How you doing, man?
Dude, I was going to say the best I've ever been. That's not quite true. My throat's not working with me. The snow's pretty bad. But if you take all that out of the context, I'm living my best life right now.
That's all we can happen. Like I said, I'm living an American broke dream. The American dream is dead. So I'm living good as much as I can. Now I want to ask you right off the bat, DJ Cereal Sauce. How did you come up with that name?
All right, here's the thing. It's probably significantly less interesting than a lot of other people that come up with their online aliases. I've talked to a lot of people who have funny online aliases. One guy I've talked to, his name is The Other Frost, and literally his only semblance, he was like, you know what? I played Call of Duty games when I was younger, and I really liked the blue camos, and the word Frost was taken on every damn social media platform, but no one has The Other Frost. And I'm like, that's kind of boring, but I think it's hilarious. So for me, what it was is, you know the South Park games, like the Stick of Truth and all of that?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so a few years back when that had first dropped, maybe within the first year of its life or so, me and my friends were playing it, and me and my friend actually, and there's a portion in the game where it lets you pick all of your traits and whatnot, and then it asks you for your name, which of course the name doesn't actually matter because then they just call you some offensive words. I don't remember what specifically, but this was kind of in the era of like the jokes that were kind of adjacent to like, hey, yo, it's your boy Skinny Penis, right? And so we were like, we were like, you know what? Let's just come up with some absolutely batshit insane name, and it actually just came off the cuff and just came off the dome for him. And he was just like, you know what? Make it DJ Cereal Sauce. I was like, where the hell did you even come up with that? And that was the whole thing. And honestly, it probably wouldn't be nearly as funny today if a part of my whole brand and a part of my whole, I guess, character was, if it wasn't being a producer, it probably wouldn't be nearly as funny. But
Yeah.
we are.
It's unique, and it's funny as you was, mentioning that. I thought of you ever watched the Amazon show The Boys?
I have a friend who has seen a ton of it, and they will send me snippets and tell me a lot about it, but I haven't seen it myself.
You're missing out, man. You gotta watch it. You had to watch it.
I know.
You're missing out. I think what is it? Season 4 about to come out too. So
Yeah.
definitely it as you was telling the story, I thought about it because it's very it's not family friendly, let's put it that way. So it's a really entertaining show. Now for the kids, I won't get too much in depth in it, but let's just say the penis is not the most egregious term heard on that program. But fun fact, it's actually funny. Now it's on IMDb now, but most people don't know this. I hosted my own radio show when I was in college for
Okay.
my college's broadcast. It wasn't as crazy as DJ Cereal Sauce, but I went by DJ Long Walks on the Beach, and it was a hit. People would call in and be like, and the funny part about it is I don't go to the beach, so oh God.
You just pulled that one out of a hat?
Truth be told, I don't even know how I came up with that name. I don't, and I haven't told people that story. It's been a couple years, but most people don't know that. DJ Long Walks on the Beach. I'm sure you could probably listen to some of my older stuff. It's on the internet somewhere, but yeah, that's a conversation for another day. Now, enough chitter chatter. Let's get into this. Let's have some fun because this is the most charismatic way. So, we originally, when I was going to bring you on, we was going to talk about the writer's strike, and obviously time has changed, time has passed, and a lot of things has changed. And then, off camera, we was talking about Marvel. We all love Marvel. Superhero movies is like the game changer nowadays. How do you feel about Marvel? Are you a big fan? How do you feel about DC? Which one you lean towards? How you feel about the superhero genre?
So the good news is that the good news is that the majority of my friends around me enjoy Marvel just at a baseline. We have plenty of differing opinions on how we feel about specific IPs that they have. Obviously, most people are going to turn to some of their more controversial ones, namely the ones that have come out within the last, I don't know, two-ish years, give or take. But I also have a lot of friends who are into DC as an IP, and will, as a result, they're like, well, DC finally turned X, Y, and Z character into a movie, gave them a movie of their own. Maybe I should go see it. And then they go see it, and they're like, well, I'm not surprised, but it sucks. So in general, yeah, I'm a pretty big fan of them. I like DC's IPs, although I don't consume them very much. I just like seeing little snippets of them, and I like hearing what my friends' opinions are on the movies. And I will more than likely take their advice and actually go watch some of the specific movies if they tell me to. But I also have a problem where I don't watch very many movies in recent years, and so it doesn't happen, but it's on my list.
Come on, with streaming platforms, that's no excuse, Dylan. I'm disgusted with you right now, man. Come on, you gotta get it together.
You're not the first person to tell me that, actually. One of the last guys that I hosted on my show, he was like, motherfucker, if you don't go watch these shows, I swear.
Now, I will say, I don't watch a lot of the TV shows. I don't try to watch Falcon and Winter Soldier, WandaVision, Loki. They weren't bad, but they weren't they didn't keep me long. I watched a couple episodes and I kind of just tuned out. But the movies, at least in the last 2 years, I'm a big fan of. The last couple years, we're going to get into that, has not been really good. But truth be told, I'll tell people this all day long. I've been a DC guy since I was a little kid. I know the Martian Manhunter. I know every major character that isn't Superman. I love DC, and unfortunately, I'm still a little biased. Don't get me wrong. I think Marvel has better movies. I do think DC has better animation movies. I think hopefully with James Gunn, they start turning out some better products. But so far, Marvel's still killing the superhero movie genre. So unfortunately, I say that with a heavy heart because I love DC. You know, it's just a shame. But let me ask you something. You know, because I know you say you're a bigger fan of superhero movies now, and you know there's been a whole debate on Marvel fatigue. You know, from Thor, Love and Thunder, god awful, Ant-Man, Quantumanium. You know, Marvel hasn't been churning out the movies that they did during the height of the Avengers era. Do you think Marvel fatigue is a real thing?
Oh boy. So the interesting thing about Marvel as an IP is kind of the same phenomenon that I was explaining earlier, where you're still, I mean, you're always going to have like the movies in general are always going to reach a massive scale audience. And so as a result, you're going to get a massively differing level of opinions, literally depending on who you ask on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think one of the main things that I actually noticed and heard about, somebody described it really interestingly a few years ago, where they were like, why aren't these superhero movies at least attempting to try and lean into some of like the almost cartoonish, absurd nature that you would have in like the comics? Um, and then they actually went to. I don't think they really attempted to implement that kind of thing within their recent movies per se. Like that wasn't their intentional, like, yes, try and hit the comic book wackiness, but they definitely did have some very questionably wacky notes on it. Namely, what is this name? Modoc, I think. Uh,
Modoc. Are you talking about from Quantumanium?
yeah. Uh,
Modoc, yeah.
namely that it's like they did that, and I don't know. I don't think there's really a good way to execute that character in a live action setting just because of how absurdly cartoonish he looks. And the proof is in the pudding in how people responded to his character coming back. So I think people have like an idea of what they would want from the IP or from these IPs as a whole and what they want from the movie adaptations of comics that they like. And
Mm-hmm.
then through one for one reason or another, be it the failure of the directors or the failure of any number of teams on Marvel's end, or be it just on people's perception of a thing when it gets executed and is finally shown to their face, they don't actually want the things that they say they want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me personally, it is a fatigue, and I think one of I was having this conversation recently with a bunch of people about this, and I think the hype that Marvel was able to captivate, from 2012 to 2020, I'll give them that range, from all the Iron Mans, all the Thors, the Hulk not so much. I don't like their treatment of the Hulk, but even Black Widow, they took characters when you put them against the Supermans and the Batmans and the Wonder Womans and the Flashes. On paper, Ant-Man should not be outselling Superman. All of these other minor characters that Marvel has uplifted and made great movies and stuff. That era, unfortunately, I think is past. I think the height of it was something that I've heard this quote before. You can't catch lightning in a bottle twice. And I think Marvel found that recipe. And I think now they're more about the quantity over quality. During that
Yeah.
time, everybody was always looking for the next one. But Marvel wouldn't give it to them. They say, you got to wait a year. You got to wait 2 years. Or we're diverting from the Avengers movie, but now we're going to do a Thor solo movie so you can get a backstory to the characters. Now it seems like they're kind of rushing and they're doing quantity, and that's why movies like Thor, Love and Thunder. I love Chris Hemsworth. I love his portrayal of Thor, but that movie was it was that moment I think people started realizing Marvel needs a refresh. They need to take a step back and go for quantity. Because now go for quality, excuse me, not quality, quantity, because it just seems like now there's like a superhero movie every 5-6 months, and I think that anticipation isn't there anymore. Now the question is, can Marvel get back to the Avengers height? Do you think they can reasonably get back to that type of era, or do you think it's kind of a one off and that's it?
All right. So there's a couple of differing opinions that kind of surround this whole thing. I tend to think that there is more than likely a way that they can capture close to the same amount of hype that the Avengers as a whole, group of people could generate. I think even if they couldn't hit 100% threshold, they could hit, clean 75% or more. But there's a couple of interesting things that have surrounded that whole thing, which is that like maybe it's not a good idea to try and bring back the original characters who made up the Avengers if you've killed them. Because if you remember, there was that whole thing where people were like theorizing that they were going to try and bring back Iron Man and Black Widow, and people were like, "What was the point of you guys killing them then?" Like,
Yeah.
at that point, it's like, are they just bringing them back just because of the fact that they know that a lot of people haven't been very receptive to the new characters that they're introducing? And the new characters is actually kind of the other half of the equation, which is that I don't know, not nearly as many people care about the newcomers that are coming into the series. It could be for a potential reason of like some of these characters aren't fleshed out enough to make people care about them. It could be their movie and or TV show adaptations of them that people don't really like. And so I think the potential for them to effectively generate the same amount of hype as Avengers did is going to actually require them to put more effort into giving the large mainstream audience fan base to care about the new characters that they are trying to form a pseudo Avengers style team with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, I think one of the things you mentioned, and I think Marvel needs to get back to, is making people care, right? And that's why I mentioned Ant-Man and Black Panther. That was a cultural phenomenon, but let's be truthful here. Compared to Superman, Black Panther, or even the Hulk, Black Panther wasn't a major player. I mean, I knew of Black Panther, but a lot of people didn't really understand the character until they did the movie on him and introduce him into the Avengers and stuff like that. But they made you care about all of these characters. Hawkeye, he's a secondary character to the Avengers, but yet they made you care about him. They made you care about everybody, and they took no-name characters and built them up to a point that they was on the level of the Hulk when it came to in terms of you caring about these characters. Now, I got to take a break for a second. Marvel, I will never forgive you for the mistreatment of the Hulk. That's one of the things I think they need to rectify, because what are they doing with the Hulk? I'm actually a little disappointed with that. But ultimately, I think that Marvel needs to take a step back and reuse that formula. I think if it's not broken, you don't need to fix it. So I think they need to go back to the original format. You do these solo movies, you get people to care, and then you start introducing them, meeting them into different scenarios. Introducing the multiverse, because we all know the multiverse is already here. Yeah. So they can do that and get back to that era. But I do think that they became I think when you get to that point of dominance and power and influence, that sometimes what got you there, and this is just human nature, but when you get to that point, sometimes you can slack off. And I think they just need to get back to that original format, making people care about the movies. Because to be honest, I just watched Ant-Man Quantumanium like a week ago. I didn't watch it when it came out. I didn't even watch it anywhere when it came out. And truth be told, it wasn't horrible. Is it the Marvel I'm used to watching? No. I didn't care. Granted, I did like Kang. I did love the portrayal of him, but the movie itself it wasn't what Marvel made us fall in love with, and I think they need to get back to that. Do you agree?
Yeah, this is actually something I just now kind of thought about, which is that Marvel kind of established their mainstay characters, the people who were a part of the original Avengers team. They had their Iron Mans and their Thors and their Hulks and all of that stuff. And for the most part, they executed their build-up movies to what is effectively a glorified crossover episode, although I still love them. They built up the characters all the way up to that level. by
Hmm.
giving them their solos and then letting them appear in other places in minor areas, and then eventually having all of them have a marginally greater impact on the total situation. And then they had their kind of secondary-esque characters that you had mentioned previously, where now that they have attempted to they made one movie for some of these one-off characters, quote unquote, so kind of side characters and whatnot, like Doctor Strange and Ant-Man and Black Panther are the three best examples. And then the biggest event that movie cinema has ever seen probably happened. And then they were like, all right, well, now that that whole song and dance is taken care of and done for, how about we make sequels to those movies for those three characters, or for, other characters that have been kind of given the same treatment. They made the second movie, and then it seems like they just lost the formula on how to make it proper, and they tried making it a lot bigger than it was supposed to be, and that kind of didn't give them the same magic that the original ones did. Obviously,
Hmm.
like with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and the second Black Panther movie, I still enjoyed them. I'd still go watch them again. um but to say that those had a stranglehold on us in the same way that the original movies for those characters did, I think is disingenuous.
Yeah, yeah. It's not that. I will say Doctor Strange 2, I was a fan of. I loved it. I do think they did a great job with that movie. But it felt like every movie after that was kind of it was lackluster. Thor Love and Thunder should have been a way better movie. The fart jokes and the humor was just it wasn't funny. And I think I get at this point they're experimenting with different things. Obviously, when Chris Hemsworth, I know him and the director. I'm gonna botch his name, so I'm not even going to attempt to say it.
Taika
But I
Waititi.
know, yeah, yeah, you got it
Okay.
right. Thank you for taking a shot for me. I appreciate it. But I know that was like a collab project for them. This is something that they wanted to make on their own, but I think that they can play around, but still stick with the formula. I know they're trying to go on a more diverse route and have a more uh, layers to these movies where it's not just. I know it's a family friendly content, but they're also trying to make it a little more edgier, a little more cool to appeal to everybody. But I think they're also losing some of that groundwork that they laid, and I think they need to go back to that formula. The TV shows in that aspect, I, see, I'm in the minority here, no pun intended. Um, come on, come on, no pun intended. I'm not a huge fan of him. She Hulk, I've tried to watch. I wasn't a huge fan. I think for She Hulk, they should have did an introduction movie to her. I think the TV show put a lot of people off to the point that now if they do a movie about her, I don't know if that appeal is going to be there. I don't know if people are going to be running to the theaters like they used to. And I think ultimately, there's a lot of things Marvel need to clean up. What they're doing with Spider-Man, because I have no idea what they're doing with Spider-Man. The Hulk, what are they doing with the Hulk? He disappeared. I think he showed up in Doctor Strange 2, I think, but we haven't seen him since. Um, they need to find a new format but keep the same format. And one of the things I want to touch on too, what you mentioned, there has been rumors, and I think they're still considering bringing on Tony Stark, Iron Man, Captain America, back. And it's something that I'm gonna be a little cheesy here, but the WWE and other sports do, where they bring back these old veterans, these people with the name, bring out The Rock and Stone Cold for the cheap pop to sell WrestleMania and all this stuff. And I think now they're starting to realize a lot of other organizations are starting to realize that we need to start building new talent, because we can't always rely on Iron Man and Captain America and Thor to carry the torch, because at some point the actors are going to get older. As we already know with Iron Man and Captain America, they already gave him their send off. So they need to go back to rebuilding these new characters and making people care again. And I didn't get a chance to watch the Marvels, but I sort of reviews on that, and it was annihilated. It was a box office bomb, which is a shock for Marvel. A box office bomb, underwhelming. A lot of people hated it. They felt like they went into this woke era, which I'm not really going to get too much into unless you want to talk about it. But do you think that Marvel needs to actually, you know what? For the sake of this, let me ask you: do you think Marvel is leaning too much into the woke era instead of just catering to what people want to see?
I think for people to call most pieces of media woke are so far gone past the point that they don't even know what that word means.
I
Uh,
agree.
and to the point where it's like, because like I don't know, woke doesn't really have the same definition that it used to. 90% of the time, it's going to be used by people who don't know what it means to try and describe something that's trying to be inclusive to other people that are not the majority.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a bad thing, but people have used it as a bad thing because they're afraid of change, and that's just the way that things go. The probably the most prominent point where that became a tone shift for the audience and not necessarily for the direction is obviously with She-Hulk. Because I think there's a whole portion in She-Hulk where she's like, you have no idea what it's like to have to control your rage like I do or something. And then the obvious connotation is the fact that Hulk has literally been hunted down for as long as he has been the Hulk, for crying out loud. But
Right.
I don't think anything is entering a woke era. I think what you had mentioned earlier about Marvel and their associated directors trying to be experimental with what they're doing is leaving an accidental byproduct of people thinking it's woke when really it's just bad writing direction.
Yeah, I could agree with that. And one of the things I will say is people have lost the meaning of woke. I do think there is some pandering going on, and there's two sides to it. I do like that they're trying to be experimental. They're giving people of color, people of the LGBT community, disabilities. They're giving people in different, from different cultures, if you will, a shine. They're giving people representation. That's actually a better word to say it. But I also do think some of the narratives that they're pushing and stuff like that it's a turn off. And I think they needed to get away from that. Stick to what these movies are. It allows people to get away from life, and escape reality. Because we all know that there's nobody flying through buildings and pick up buildings and throw them around. We all know it's fake. But I'm an actor. I know that. But people go to the movies because it allows them to enjoy something and escape life. And you don't want the last thing you want to do after a long day of work or watching your kids or whatever is to go to a movie that's pushing propaganda that you can just see on Twitter, formerly X, now X, or the media. You want to watch these movies and be like, wow. I think Marvel needs to go back to that. But this actually leads me to another question I have for you. A lot of DC actually is experimenting with this whole PG 13 rated R format. I try to watch Doom Patrol. I was a little turned off by it, but Doom Patrol. You have The Boys, who a lot of people enjoy that TV show. Is rated R. I mean, you're not really going to want your kids to watch that show. But they are going to a more edgier content, at least in the TV format. Do you think that we're at that phase now where you can keep a family friendly product, but also make it a little more edgy and riskier? Do you think that pushing the boundaries a little more is going to be the next phase for all of these superhero movies?
Oh boy, I don't know. I don't know if I believe that it would necessarily be the next phase. But I do think that it's weird. It's now more possible than ever, but also the most dangerous because on one hand, there's a lot of media. Well, actually, I don't know. I guess because where I was going with all this is that like YouTube, for example, has become an almost obnoxiously kid-friendly place in how they're trying to push and advertise and the rules that they're creating. And I don't necessarily know if that's sinking over to Hollywood or any of these other, kind of smaller form companies doing the same thing. So I don't know if it's necessarily the next wave, if it's the next push, if it's the next move. Uh, all I really care about is how well they execute this stuff in the writing and the acting and the pacing of it all. Because like there are definitively plenty of kids friendly media that even people who are above the age of a child can appreciate and enjoy outside of the context of just watching it with their kid or their niece or their nephew. And there are even some kid friendly media, much like how there was a lot of kid friendly media back in when you were younger and growing up that you never really realized. A lot of
Right.
a lot of children's media would make a lot of inappropriate jokes but hide them under the guise of stuff that children don't understand. And so like parents would look at that and they'd be like, "Ha, that's funny." Or you'd grow up and you'd see it years later and you'd be like, "Ha, that's funny." So I think it's definitely it's an interesting and I think a potentially very appropriate move that they could take. I think it's just like you need to pick what the main focus of your show is or what the main focus of your movie is. Like obviously the whole concept of superheroes as a medium, I guess, is mostly built and originated to kind of entertain children or like a younger audience anyways. And so I think some people forget that sometimes. But on the other hand, I also recognize that the media should grow and change with its audience if they can find a good way to do it. And so I do like the idea of if they want to take a more family friendly approach, sure, I don't knock you for it. If the end product comes out bad, it sucks to suck, I guess.
Yeah, I ask you that because when we watch Deadpool is a prime example of it's not rated R. Actually, no, I do think it is rated R. But Deadpool is one of those characters. Everybody loved those movies. Everybody loved them. The humor, the dark jokes, the grittiness of it. People love it. The Boys is a very rated R show. They took a lot of these powerful superheroes and even just human beings in these shows, and they made it an edgier product for people. And one of the things you mentioned was your fan base. I think you can, we're at the time now where a lot of these companies realize, okay, we were advertising to the young audience, but there are people in their 30s and 40s who want to go to these movies too. People in their 20s, they're our primary fan base too. So how do we appeal to that as well? And I think I think a lot of it is experimenting with the TV shows, right? Because a lot of TV shows, superhero TV shows now, are a little more riskier. They have nudity, they're cursing, they have, adult language and content involved with it, which is not everybody's cup of tea, but it's given the adults and or people over the age of 18 something they could bite on and enjoy. And I don't know if that's the format, but when you look at Deadpool, when you watch DC and Marvel are completely different in terms of filming and the actual movies. DC is more darker, grittier, more violent, if you will.
Yeah.
Marvel, don't get me wrong, still has its violence and stuff, but it's more family friendly oriented. But I wonder because, like in Thor: Love and Thunder, they did experiment with a little more adult humor. Having Chris Hemsworth showing his butt, which I'm not gonna say nothing. I'm not gonna say nothing. I, I I think they are going to start experimenting with it because they realize the audience is changing. And we're not in the 2015 era where everybody will go to this movie regardless. They need to keep people invested. And how do you do that? You kind of start changing a little bit and experiment with it. Okay, maybe we can throw a couple curse words in there. Maybe we could show a little nudity. I don't know if Marvel's going to do that 100% yet, but DC is starting to experimenting with that. And I think DC, once they figure out the movies aspect, like the writing, the directing, they will probably have more success. I think a lot of DC's failures is the directing and the movie quality isn't as a part as it's not on par with Marvel. But I think if they could clean that up a little bit and bring it up, you might start having a war in this thing. Do you agree? Or you just like they're two completely separate?
Oh boy. there's obviously always been a war between Marvel and DC, namely the most common one being like this Marvel hero versus this DC hero and whatnot. So that's been going on since as long as both of them have been in the public's eye.
Yeah.
I think that both of these both of these IPs have the potential and the ability to make absolutely insane products. They obviously just fall short in two different ways, as you had previously mentioned. And so really, it's funny to bully DC movies for the way that they execute their concepts, because their concepts, I think, are really cool. It's just the execution of them it falls flat a lot of the time. It's funny to make fun of that. Like, I watched the most recent Flash movie, and I don't know if you've seen it. It might be one of the worst things I've ever seen.
It was awful. Awful.
Yeah, not good.
You're gonna make me cry, man. Yo, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
Oh man, I love the Flash. He's my favorite superhero, and they did him dirty in that movie. What was that atrocity that they put on? And that's the part that frustrates me with DC, because there's no way, and this is no disrespect to Ant-Man, because I know there's Ant-Man fans around there, but there's no way Ant-Man should be making more money than a Flash. I'm just flabbergasted. But go ahead, continue.
Yeah, so
I'm flabbergasted.
With Flash as my main vehicle to get to the point here, they have great concepts. Their execution it falls flat a lot of the time. I want to see them get better, because I actually want to have a reason to go watch DC movies for the purpose of they're actually good movies that I should watch. And I think as soon as they get to that level, if they get to that level, that's when we're really going to start seeing both of these franchises pop off, because what's the point in Marvel having to worry about making good movies if all they have to do is make movies that are better than the Flash?
Oh man, you're gonna make me cry, man. I'm about to end this. No, I'm kidding.
He's like, I'm gonna have to cut this short and play the outro.
You brought back a scar I wanted to close permanently. Yeah, that watching that Flash movie, good God, I'm disgusted, and this is someone who has a huge bias towards DC. Now, granted, like I said, I will watch a Marvel movie in a heartbeat, but I'm a little biased with DC, and I'm just my frustration is they can do better. But one of the things, and I've talked about this on the podcast a couple times, I think DC needs a vision, and the problem is they don't have a vision. What they are doing, and which they need to do, what they're doing right now with James Gunn is a tremendous step forward. But what they need to do is follow Marvel's format, what they were doing. You have directors for these categories. So, for instance, if you have, Batman, you have Christopher Nolan. Although just a point of reference, you have Christopher Nolan doing all the Batmans. For Wonder Woman, you have this director doing that. For Flash, you have this director. And then when it comes to the big collab projects, they all come together with a vision. The problem is you have one Batman being directed by one person, then a second Batman directed by another person, then Aquaman directed by one person, then the second one is directed by a different person. So you get all different types of looks, and it's not consistent, because every director, as we've seen with Zack Snyder's cut versus I think it wasn't Josh Whedon, but the Russo brothers, when they did whoever the director was that took over Justice League. When you see Zack Snyder's version towards that version, Zack Snyder's blew it out the water, but that wasn't the one that made it to theaters. And I think DC needs to take a deep breath and stop trying to catch up with Marvel. They don't need to. Superman will sell himself. Wonder Woman will sell herself. Not that type of selling. Watched it. The Flash will sell himself. These characters will sell. They just need to put on a better product. And even in the case of Shazam with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who a lot of people say I look alike, I don't see the resemblance. But even with that movie, it was poor choices made, and I think they're trying to match Marvel, but they're not doing it in a manner that makes the quality as good. So they need to stop trying to push out as many movies as they can and really take a deep breath. You know, we're not going nowhere. The most charismatic man is always open for business. So if you need a new Aquaman, you know, just call me. But you know, they just need to take a step and focus on a quality. How do you agree with that, or do you think it's just?
I mean, in general, yeah, it's always like the more time you spend on working on a project within like a within reason, the better your product is going to be. I think yeah, all of that comes off of the backs of kind of what was mentioned previously, which is that like they're not taking the time to build a proper foundation on which to put this character on top of, or even to put the story of this character on top of for the movie they put them in. So I think in general, yeah, if you just slow down and be like, all right, wait a few years, let us make this character. Let us fully flesh them out and make a movie about them that is good. And I specifically emphasize the word them about it or in it because another issue that I'm finding, and I don't know if this happens as much with DC because again, if my only interaction with them in recent years has been that Flash movie, but I think in general what superhero movies need to stop doing is if they're going to try and make us care about a character, you need to stop throwing in a bunch of other characters that because then you just draw the attention away from them. And then you have to focus on not slandering this character's appearance on screen and not slandering their character. When it's like, you know, if there are some instances where it makes sense, like if you're going to deal with something as big and to scale as like Multiverse of Madness, for example, like it's fine to have those characters in there, but like I don't really know why they needed to have both Batman and Wonder Woman or no, it wasn't Wonder Woman. Who was it? Or was it?
I don't remember. About the Flash?
Yeah.
Supergirl.
Okay, that was why I was confused. It's like I don't really know what those two added to the story at a baseline. Sure, they had their moments probably, but it's like if you're gonna make this about the Flash, you might want to try and focus on what he's doing and not make another integral part of the story revolve around these other characters as much, especially if you're not even going to do them justice while you're doing it.
Yeah, I think the Flash two things. Even though Batman and Supergirl didn't really need to be in a movie, they definitely were better actors. Ezra Miller, outside of his legal issues, I don't think he was a good Flash, and this just might be my opinion. I don't think he captured. You know who's a good Flash? Grant Gustin from the TV show Flash. He portrays Flash in an amazing way. Ezra Miller made the Flash too goofy and. I didn't like the running, the cinematography. I didn't like the special effects. It was the TV show has a smaller budget, and they did Flash better justice than the movie did. And I think ultimately what it comes down to is choices. They need. I will always give Marvel credit for this. They are, and I know the casting director who casts all of those movies, Sarah Finn, amazing woman. She casts these actors in great roles, and I can't take that away from Marvel. Yeah, you might not like certain people, but their casting is top notch. It's very rare that they miss, and in that turn, you could have a all right project and still have a character that people care about. DC. Yeah, they're taking characters like Supergirl. I know Supergirl, but not everybody knows who Supergirl is. And then to make a whole movie without introducing her backstory and that she's Superman's cousin and how she came to Earth, a lot of people are like, who is this? Why should I care about her? Oh, she just flies and she has the Superman logo. But that's not enough. You know, Marvel, what they did, and it was beautiful. I think it was Avengers Civil War when they introduced Black Panther. They had Black Panther introduce him, how he got into the suit, what made him get into that suit, introduce him. And then we have a movie coming out to explain more about him. So when that movie came out, that intrigue, that appeal was there already. So they didn't have to worry about who the hell is Ant-Man, Black Panther? Who is this guy? They already kind of knew who he was. So going to the movie was like, oh, okay, I like him, I vibe with him. And it was such a culture phenomenon. DC needs to get to that. And I think, unfortunately, when you have too many cooks trying to make a lasagna, how many cooks do you need to make a basic pan lasagna? You know, DC has like 8 chefs in the kitchen. You got one putting in beef, you got one putting in pork, you got another one putting in vegetables, you got another one putting in water. And the problem is it's not cohesive. So they need, and I say this with respect because I would love to work with DC at some point. They need to let the directors stick with that, like Marvel does. The Russo brothers have directed most of the Avengers movies, but you have Thor has his own director. Captain America had his own director. Thor has his own director. Let these people have a vision, and then let them come together. That's the best way to get a project. Do you agree? Can I get an amen?
Amen. No, I thought you were gonna say. I thought you were gonna say, "Hey, DC, what you need to do is you need to cast me as insert character here."
They kind of know that already. That's why people want me to replace Aquaman.
You're like, yeah, that's a given.
Come on. This here is a money maker for them. They're missing out. No, time is coming. But I just say this because the Marvel and DC debate. I debate it mostly from the history of DC and not from a cinematographic viewpoint. Because Marvel, unfortunately, is leaps and bounds in terms of movies better than DC, unfortunately. But the crazy part is DC has the moneymaker characters. Iron Man, before Iron Man and Avengers came out, nobody was clamoring to see an Iron Man movie. But you can guarantee people will pay good money to see Superman, Batman, The Flash. They even bring Martian Manhunter. He had a 2-second cameo. I'm like, come on, man. If anything,
Wait,
Martian Manhunter, yeah, in Justice League. He showed up I think halfway in or towards the end for 2 minutes and he disappeared. If anything, it would have been better to have Martian Manhunter instead of Cyborg, because when you think of the Justice League, you don't think of Cyborg, you think of Martian Manhunter. But they didn't flush him out, so a lot of people just look at him like, "Oh, that's ET." No, that's Martian Manhunter.
Like DC did not get the rights to ET. Quit playing with yourself.
Hey, but you know what? If you don't make people care and you don't give people the information, a lot of people don't know who Martian Manhunter is. He's by far, if not the most powerful, the second or third most powerful character. Him, Superman, and the Flash are by far the 3 top tier super powerful people in the Justice League. And yet, when it comes to these movies, it's not, the justice isn't done. No pun intended. It's not cohesive. And I will say, DC do have great casting. Jason Momoa's Aquaman, come on, that's a moneymaker. Henry Cavill, wasted opportunity, but that was Superman. And look what happened. They got rid of him. And let me ask you, are you looking forward to the James Gunn era of DC?
If I'm honest, I totally had forgotten that he was even taking over for that role in the first place. Like it had kept coming up, but I was like, I don't know. It was like my brain just processed it as like a series of words and didn't really piece together the context behind them or piece together like what that actually meant for them as a series. I think he's done a good job at being a director, but I think the other portion of the fact is like knowing that we have a definitive director to take on these projects is a good step. It could be somebody I've never freaking heard of. And I'd still be like, hey, at least, to your point about they have too many cooks in the kitchen. I'm like, all right, here's the main chef. He is going to, he's going to be the one cooking. We need like that instills confidence in me. And that is now, but what that does mean is it's now going to make people incredibly critical of everything that he publishes for them, because they're going to be like, bro, you did so good in X, Y, and Z projects. Why did you do my favorite character dirty? if he doesn't do as good of a job as people are expecting of him.
I think it's refreshing to have him. Another criticism that DC gets, they don't let the directors have full control. And what I mean by that is so many directors have came out and said, hey, I had Zack Snyder, I had a vision. And instead of letting me see that vision, they changed everything. I know Justice League, unfortunately, he had to leave because of the passing of his daughter, but they didn't let him come back and continue. They put a whole new director in there and he changed the whole thing. And that's why the movie the non-Zack Snyder cut was such a bomb because it wasn't fleshed together. You just woke up in the middle of the movie and you have all these characters in there, and they expect you to just be like, "Oh, hey, yeah." But again, if you don't make people care about these characters, then it doesn't mean anything. I love Superman, and most people will go see a Superman and Batman movie regardless. But who's these other characters? Why should I care about them? Who's this Justice League? Because there's people who don't know who the Justice League is, and they just don't have cohesion. The executives, the people who run DC, shall let the directors see their vision through. And if the movie bombs, then okay, you can say, you know what? Granted, it's easy said than done when you don't have 300 million on the line. But when you hire a director as an actor, when I'm on set and stuff, when there's a director, I trust their vision. And even if I feel like I could fine tune things, that's a conversation we have. And we get together. They let me know their thoughts. I let them know my thoughts, and we work. But then if we do all of that, and then you have somebody else that scratch the whole thing, I don't want to. I'm not a fan of it. And then when the movie comes out, it's nowhere near the director's vision. It's nowhere near the actor's vision of the character. What do you do? And I think DC needs to take. They have their hands tight around the project too much. They're choking them. Let that grip go a little bit, and let the directors, let the producers, the people who are overseeing these projects, let them, do their job. Let them breathe. Let them do what they see fit for the character or for the movie, and then let's see how it plays out. Because Marvel, since the beginning, I'm sure they had a little more hands on for the first couple movies, but it was masterpieces. And look now, Iron Man. They didn't. I'm sure Marvel's like, hey, we trust you, Kevin Feige. Get ahead and do what you got to do. And look what happened. Every movie was $1 billion plus. I think DC needs to go that route. But until DC executives realize, hey, we should trust the people we hire, it won't change, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is actually a good point about it. Is it's like, yeah, sure, you have a director change, and you have the consistency of knowing that this is the guy who's going to be responsible for everything. Now you have to look at everybody who's surrounding them and go, all right, now you need to like step back a little bit. Like let him get comfortable in his new place before he leaves because of like workplace harassment, metaphorically.
Yeah, it has to be that way. And as someone up close and personal, and have been doing this for a while, I understand the process, and I understand that when you hire somebody to do a job, you got to let them do the job. It's like if I tell you I hire you to be a DJ, but I tell you, hey, I'm going to watch everything you do. And if I don't like it, I'm going to change everything. But if I hire you to be a DJ, I got to let you do DJ. You know what I'm saying? And I think DC, once they let that rein go and that tight leash, it's the same thing with WWE. When the president of the company lets the talent, lets its subordinaries, lets the directors and the people who are directly hands-on do their job, you get a magical project. Now, if it bombs, then you can say, hey, you know what, maybe we should, input a little more. But you got to let them breathe a little bit. And until they do that, it's going to be the same rinse and repeat formula, because there's always going to be, oh, come on, man. What are we watching here? And I think Man of Steel was by far, outside of Zack Snyder's cut, was by far, outside of Batman and Christopher Nolan, was by far the best DC movie. And it was because it was fleshed out. Granted, a lot of people didn't like, some people didn't like it, but it was fleshed out. You got the backstory. You got to understand Superman. You got to meet Lois Lane. You got to meet Perry. You got to meet his parents and how his father's death influenced him become the Man of Steel. You got to see all that. And unfortunately, they did it for that one movie, and then everything else was like, you just wake up as Wonder Woman. The Flash just woke up one day, he was the Flash. It's like, no, you got to make people invest in these characters. But what do I know? I'm just a new Jason Momoa on the scene. I can't help it. But actually, one more question about James Gunn, because obviously, I don't know if you know this, but many people have heard this is Jason Momoa's last outing as Aquaman. Aquaman 2 was the last one of the DC run before James Gunn takes over and reboots the whole thing. What do you see happening now? Do you think that James Gunn could potentially do something good for the franchise? Because when he first got announced, a lot of people was dismissing him already, because he released Henry Cavill. Surprisingly, I'm hearing he's keeping Wonder Woman on, which is surprising because Gal Gadot, who I met and is wonderful, but I feel like Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck were great in their roles, but he's getting rid of him and keeping her outside the point. But do you think that this could be the time that DC can actually start catching up to Marvel?
I think if there's any time where they're going to start catching up, or at least developing an identity of their own to be really good, it's going to be right now. That's not to say it will happen, but I think now is probably the greatest chance for it to be happening than I don't know, any time before its inception, I guess. Because, you know, if you wanted to make it a fleshed out and its own thing, you probably should have done that from the get go. But yeah, I think if there's any time, it's the present. And while there might be some very questionable choices that are being made, I don't know. I'm erring on the side of being optimistic about, like, I'm sure there's probably a good reason why he's cutting those characters, because maybe the concept is, okay, now we're moving into this new era of James Gunn kind of directing and overseeing all of this. So maybe he's like, let's just get them out of the limelight where people are still bullying them for the roles that they were placed in prior. Even if the public can recognize they're good in these roles, they've just been screwed over by bad writing or whatever. I could reasonably believe that James Gunn could look at it as like, okay, this is where we're at right now. We're starting new. We just need to find new characters, flesh them out, give people a reason to care about the character again, and not necessarily rely and do all of this off of the backs of people who like actors who people already know and love. But I also do understand that it seems a little bit questionable that if that is the route that he's deciding to take, you are taking out your main hitters and leaving in other people who already have that established perception of them as like, oh, this is this character. This person, as most of the public sees them, is played by this actor. And they're fleshed out enough to the point where, under my hypothetical situation, they should also be axed to make way for new people to flesh out the series. But I could also, you know, a part of that could be due to the fact of like Henry Cavill and I already forgot the other guy's name you mentioned.
Chris Evans?
No, whoever was playing Batman prior.
Oh, Ben Affleck?
Ben Affleck, yeah. Any of those, it's like, all right, these guys have been doing it for too long. We need to make them step out. So, yeah, I don't know. Decisions are a little bit questionable, but I think if there's any time for DC to be trying to expand, improve, and be better on their own, it's probably right now.
Yeah, you know what? That's a fair assessment, and I think my gripe, and I think many people's gripe is, if you're gonna reboot the whole franchise, just reboot the whole thing. You know, because truth be told, I think a lot of people were upset about him releasing and dropping all of these actors. Where, hey, they didn't get the just due, and yeah, they did a couple movies, but we didn't really get to see them at their strength, at their peak. So, but even if you take that, why are we keeping Wonder Woman? Like, why not recast Wonder Woman? Why are we bringing, and this, like I said, no disrespect to her, but Jason Momoa is a better Aquaman than Gal Gadot as a Wonder Woman. Same with Henry Cavill, Superman. Why not just reboot the whole thing? Get rid of everybody if you're gonna reboot it. But it just seems, and I know people throw this whole, oh well, because Wonder Woman is ageless. Well, so is Superman, you know. So if we're gonna, you know, I think it's weird that they only gonna keep certain people and then reboot the whole thing. No, if you want a clean slate, you got to start clean. You know, you can't rebuild the house by keeping the same foundation, the same foundation that allowed the house to fall in the first place. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But I will say, I will give him credit because I do think he's looking at longevity. And realistically, unfortunately, Ben Affleck in his late 40s, Henry Cavill just turned 40. Gal Gadot is almost 40 as well. Chris Evans, all of these characters are either approaching 40 or over 40. So maybe it was time for these actors, getting some newer faces like myself, and and get younger blood in there so you can realistically get like 5, 6, 7 movies out of them. It's hard to do that when you have a 40-year-old. So in that aspect, I will give him benefit of the doubt, and I hope that they allow James Gunn, because it doesn't matter if you get The Rock to come out on Raw or Stone Cold to come out on SmackDown. If you don't allow them to be themselves, then you're not going to get that true feeling and that must see feeling that people are looking for. So time will tell. Time will tell. And if you see me on the big screen, I told you so. No, I'm kidding. um, as we talk about this, though, there is a question, and this is a question I've thought about myself. I was telling my manager about this because ultimately I actually do want to get into superhero movies. That's my goal, and it's not because of the money and stuff. It's actually because I want to empower people. Now, I'm not opposed to playing the villain either. Kang, look at Kang. Let me not use that one now. But
bad example.
Yeah, bad example. But you can get longevity out of characters that aren't the heroes per se, right? But do you think that superhero movies has been dominating for like the last 12 years? They're dominating the box office. And yeah, we have Barbie Heimer, and that was a great run. But people aren't running to the movie theaters anymore. Do you think that movie theaters is just it is right now what it is? Superhero movies are the bread and butter, and these are going to be the movies that dominate the theater experience or the movie experience. Do you feel like this is the genre that's taking over?
All right. So the funny thing about superhero movies is that when they first started getting into the limelight and like really catching people's attention, and if we're going to say this is, about 10, 12 years ago, at that time it was probably because it was like, this is the first introduction into giving people a reason to care about superheroes, which ultimately came from comic books, which, not nearly as many people cared when even those were first releasing as they pertain to superheroes and whatnot. So I think the first couple of years, it was catching people's eye, and they were like, "Oh, what is this? This is the kinds of stuff that I'm seeing in here is stuff you'd only see in like a video game or something that's so far gone from reality, but in a way that is like cool to people, that they really it's flashy, it's colorful, there's a lot going on, and it's really eye-catching. And so the first few years were kind of that happening, and then probably due to the high amount of success that those generated, it's like, okay, now we have the foundation to be able to build up these things and keep them going, because we know that people enjoy this kind of content, and then people kept eating it up. And then again, it just kept escalating until we got to where we were at with like Avengers Endgame, essentially. And then it hit a sharp decline where people were like, oh, okay, now what? Now what's happening? And so then they were trying to do sequels to follow up on characters that they didn't give enough, that they hadn't shown enough growth for, or, what is this person doing after the events of this massive climactic event? And then those things that had been occurring, and then they were like, all right, we killed off some of these characters, we need to bring in some new people, and then we started seeing the cracks where they were like, okay, maybe we have forgotten how to introduce a new character properly. We haven't given these characters enough of a foundation to stand on, to make them their own fleshed out character, to make people care about them. And so I have a feeling it's going to taper off. It's already kind of tapering off a little bit, but I think it's going to taper off even more if they can't, get their stuff together. But I think if they are able to get their stuff together, I think it's going to probably be just as rejuvenating and just as popular as it was that many years ago, if not more popular, simply because you have more people to attract, and you have more people that you are currently attracting with your shows and your movies. And I think it will still kind of maintain the same reasons that people were going to watch them in the first place, which is like, not everybody wants to see these like super gritty, like tragic depictions of real life events. Obviously, a lot of people still do, because it's an excellent work of cinematography and X, Y, and Z. But superhero movies objectively still have something different to offer from what the, I guess, objective majority of movies that are coming out are doing. It's kind of becoming its own medium, where now it's like you have fiction, you have nonfiction, you have historical, you have like documentary style stuff, and then you have like superhero movies in their own category. And so I think it's basically become reified and solidified as its own category of movie that can hopefully healthily exist alongside other genres of movies that can give people a taste of something different when they don't want to be watching. I can't even think of a good example right now, but
no, I get what you mean. I think that that's the crazy part. That's why Barbieheimer, which is for people who don't know the reference, Barbie and Oppenheimer, when those came out, was because it was the first time in a while that a non-superhero movie put a lot of its time into marketing, budgeting, and press release. Because unfortunately, Marvel and superhero movies in general were dominating the box office. If you had a movie, unfortunately, that was coming out, and I know Tom Cruise talked about this, where if you know you're going against a Marvel movie, maybe you should delay the release a little bit, because you're going to be competing a lot, and you may not get those numbers that you normally would if you're going against a Marvel. And I think now the tide has changed. And I think it's mostly because of the fatigue and the lack of anticipation. Now we could get back to that anticipation again. Superhero movies will still run. It will still go on, but it will go a lot higher. I think the fatigue and the enthusiasm is kind of weighing off a little bit, but people are still flocking to the movie theaters to see Marvel, to see these superhero movies. They're not really going to see a lot of these other movies that are making it to the movie theaters. And unfortunately, most people are using streaming services to see these other movies when they have the time. But when you're going to pay your hard-earned money, truth be told, the last time I seen a non-Marvel movie in the movie theater was probably Mission Impossible, the last one besides Dead Reckoning. That was the last time I went to movies to see a movie not superhero related. So, I don't think it's going to go anyway. Go away. I think it's here to stay, which is a good thing and a bad thing. And I think with technology, as it gets better and it gets more refined, the CGI effects are going to get tremendously better. The other special effects that they have to do is going to get way better. So then it's going to increase the movie experience for everybody involved. So, I don't know if superhero movie is going to be out anytime soon. I would give it another 10, 15 years, because I know Marvel has projects scheduled all the way to 2027. That's how far in advance they think. So, I think until people get tired and really fed up of it, they're always going to run to see a Marvel movie, a superhero movie. And, one of those movies might be me, wearing tights and, saving a chick from a flying car. But, it's good, you might see me in one of those. That's all I'm saying. But
that's the refresh we need. They've been taking these
now
actors.
We're talking, though.
Now you're speaking my
now
language.
We're talking. See, this is what we got to. This is what I've been waiting for the whole time. But you know what though? I will say, from an actor's perspective, it's a double-edged sword, because I will say, during the height of Marvel, man, to be a Marvel actor, even if you were someone who only showed up for 5 seconds in the movie, that was game changing for your career. You know how many opportunities, even to this day, all of them get because of that. And I think, unfortunately, some of that appeal lost. And don't get me wrong, to be a superhero, to be in a superhero movie in today's society for an actor, the opportunities, the reach that you get is unmatched. But I do think the benefits that Robert Downey, all of them got, aren't there anymore. But I think, like I said, once the appeal starts picking up again, and Marvel and even DC too, if they go back to the tried and true format that they had before, game changer. I mean, I still remember like it was yesterday. Counting down the months until Avengers Endgame was coming out and all these other movies coming out. Like, I haven't felt that way in a while, and I know that people are waiting to scratch that itch. We just wait for Marvel to deliver that, and if they need me to deliver that, then just they know where I'm at. Just call my manager. We'll figure something out.
Yes, sir.
um. So Dylan, we had a great conversation, and I'll have you back on. I know I'm sure people are tired of me blabbing. Um, but like I said, DJ Cereal Sauce, where can people find you and everything? Because I know you have your own podcast and you have your own stuff going on. Where people can find you and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so the good news is that the name DJ Cereal Sauce is so far out there that you can look it up and you can find the majority of everything that I do. Most of it is actually music related when it first comes up. And for whatever reason, my SoundCloud comes up, even though I only use that for references and all my music is on private, but regardless, so you can search up DJ Cereal Sauce and you'll find me basically everywhere. Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts in that whole section, Twitch, all that stuff. And I've tried doing a pretty good job at putting a link tree into most of the places where I upload to most. So if you go and find that, you can just click that and it will show you literally everything I care about that you can go and find.
Perfect. DJ Cereal Sauce, it's been a pleasure. I'm glad we finally was able to get this done. Don't get me wrong, we'll have another chat. We'll talk about some stuff un-Marvel related. But thank you for taking the time. I just checked my email. Apparently, Zendaya wants me to meet up for lunch later. So, and then Dwayne The Rock Johnson apparently wants to have a wrestling match. I don't know what's going on here.
Schedule is packed. I'm glad you were able to fit me into that time slot. Thank you.
It's hard, man. You know what's crazy? And truth be told, people don't actually believe a lot of things I say. I don't either. But I actually have met a lot of these people before, so it's not too far fetched.
Yeah, it's because you're manifesting it. You keep saying their name, and then it gets in the metadata, and then it gets recommended to them, and they're like, "His hair, I gotta meet him, bro."
You know what I'm saying? Let me tell you, I was walking to Times Square a couple months ago, and I'm minding my business, jamming the Coldplay. I listen to Coldplay, don't judge. And Tom Cruise saw me. He asked me for a picture. Can you believe that? So, hey, this is where I'm at in life. I'm a humble man. You got to manifest where you want to be in life. You have to, because if you don't, then you're not going to get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
And so Dylan, it's been a pleasure to have you on. DJ Cereal Sauce, the most charismatic man. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. We're out, and like I always say, a helping hand is a better hand. Thank you again to Dylan for coming on. Stay positive, keep motivated. Chase your goals, chase your dreams, and let's make that money, shall we?